Hi, everyone. My name is Laura McConnell. I am a speech language pathologist with Columbus Speech and Hearing Center. I've been asked today by Westerville Library and Katie Ross to do a presentation for you regarding activities and ideas that are screen free for families to do together to encourage speech, language, reading, play, communication, all those great things in children in kindergarten and early elementary school age. So one of my favorite things to do is to talk about this information. I've been a speech therapist with Columbus Speech and Hearing Center for 21 years, working with children and their families, and I adore what I do. I also have two children, ages 10 and 12. So we do lots of playing and games and talking as well. So hopefully I can share some great information with you today. And hopefully you can find this information helpful. I do have a handout that I've created that will be attached beneath this link. So you can screenshot that or print that out and be able to have that along with you for some resources. So basically what I want to do during this time, of course, I want to give you lots of activities and ideas, but I think what I want to do first is to give you some strategies to use. It's very easy to go on the internet and type in whatever theme or whatever activity you want to do. You can go on Pinterest. There's so many different things out there. Sometimes I feel like it can be very overwhelming. So no matter what hits your fancy, I want you to be able to go out and find any fun activity you think your family would enjoy together. But I want to give you some strategies that you can use with any activity that you may enjoy. What one family likes, another family, it might not be their thing. So here are some strategies that you can use no matter what activity you pull. So the first one would be to get face to face, and we want to make sure that we're sharing the moment with our kids and with our family as a whole because we know that it's so special to be able to do that. We know the importance of getting face to face to communicate, to send your message, to know that your message has been received. And sometimes we can get so busy that one is standing and someone's sitting, and kind of there's lots of distractions. So the one of the big things to do when you start an activity is to get face to face. Another strategy that is really important when playing any game or activity is to really work on that turn taking. And sometimes we think, oh, that just comes naturally. When if you and I were having a conversation, you'd take a turn, I'd take a turn. We just go back and forth like that. But sometimes with kids, it can be a little different. Sometimes, depending on the activity, turn taking can go different ways. Family dynamics, those sorts of things are kind of inevitable. But the importance of that turn taking is number one, it really helps with your child's attention span. So when you're going back and forth, if you keep the turns going and say maybe they're getting distracted or something else is going on, kind of bringing them back. Let's do one more turn. Let's take one more exchange, and that will help. With their attention. It'll help with whatever your game is, whatever your topic is. It'll help you go back and forth another time, kind of really stretching out that learning and really sharing the importance of that's really a foundation and a basic of communication is taking turns back and forth, making sure the other one's heard, and also just kind of that's how the game goes. You just go back and forth. Another really great strategy, no matter what your activity, is kind of similar to that last one with taking turns. It's extending that for one more time. So that really, again, helps with vocabulary development. It helps with language development because maybe you're asking an extending question. Maybe you're giving your input that maybe they hadn't thought about. So that is another really great strategy is to extend it for another turn. Um, Something that we adults tend to do when we're interacting with kids is we tend to do lots of question asking, and we think that asking questions is a way to draw information from kids, and it can be. In my line of work, I notice that when I ask kids questions like, "What color is that?" It's a one answer response. "Do you like this game?" Yes, it's a one answer response. And sometimes when you tend to do that, it can make the conversation or the interaction feel a little imbalanced. If I did that with you and I said, "How's your day? What's your favorite thing to do on the weekend? What are you going to do this weekend?" It kind of starts to feel like I'm sending all the messages and you're just responding and you're not having a chance to send a message back. And we really want to have that balance of I take a turn, you take a turn. But as adults, we need to maybe think a little bit more about which questions we're asking. So instead of asking yes, no questions where it's just going to be one answer, or what's this, what's that, what'd they do? It's just going to be a one answer response. Instead, let's maybe shift that and instead make a comment instead of, oh, I'm really surprised that happened. If maybe you're reading a story together, or oh, I wonder what's going to happen next, some of that prediction. So there are some other questions that you can ask that kind of draws the conversation out of your child versus just asking some of that basic stuff. They probably know all their colors. They probably know lots of information already. So kind of really trying to go beyond that and extend it can really help deepen their understanding and their vocabulary and their communication. Um, Another good strategy to help again with like I just said, vocabulary description is to when your child's making a comment or telling you about something, you can add one more word or one more piece, and that can really help to extend that learning and that vocabulary. So if they say, um, I liked that. I liked that story. I'd say, I liked that story. It was really exciting. Or they might say, I like this toy. I might say, I like this. It's a really, it's a big toy. It's a fun toy. It's unique toy. It's different. So adding one more word to kind of explain things a little more, or adding like your 2 cents in can really extend what they're thinking and learning in the process. An important thing to remember. Two more before we go on to some of the developmental areas that we will address with some of our activities and ideas, is to allow for processing time for your child to respond, because we can be sending lots of message and lots of information. They can be thinking about things and really processing things and trying to put those what they're learning together. So giving them a little bit extra time once you ask them a question or make a comment. And remember, keep things back and forth. So if you took a turn and sent a message by asking a question, wait and wait gently, or wait anticipating them to respond before kind of asking again or resending your message. Give them that processing time. Sometimes kids need a little bit of extra time to think about what they want to say, to formulate their thoughts. Their little minds are growing and learning and changing so much, and they're just it's just so much vocabulary and things that they're improving on that sometimes can get a little muddled in there, and they just need a little extra time to process and to formulate. So always waiting a little longer, you think, is a great strategy. And really just during all these activities to focus on increasing their vocabulary, making connections, because that just has lifelong effects with their language, their literacy, their communication skills. So kind of that's the foundation. So hopefully that was helpful to kind of put some tools in your toolbox of what you can do. You have this great activity, but if you don't really interact and you don't really say much and you take a couple turns and you're done, there's not much learning going on there. So the richer that we can make the interaction, the richer we can make our language and vocabulary use, and the more we can engage and take turns, the better the learning is and the better the outcome is. So our next section here is the developmental areas. So these can be addressed in any activity, and I promise we will get to those activities. But again, I think these are really important foundational skills for parents to have when they interact with their children. So these developmental areas can be speech. So that's like the speech sounds that your child is using. Can be language, which is answering questions, following directions, putting sentences together. Literacy, so reading, book orientation, sight words, reading fluency, that sort of thing. So cognitive concepts, the location concepts, descriptive concepts, time concepts, these can be addressed in any activity. Gross motor, so large muscle movement can be addressed and extended. Fine motor, so like maybe scissor skills, writing skills, kind of grasping is fine motor. Sensory, so sensory is kind of like beyond what the five senses, and it's a little bit more like input to your body. How does that feel in your body? and maybe some tactile information can be the sensory piece. Maybe if you're feeling tired, what can wake you up? And if you're feeling a little overwhelmed and overstimulated, what can calm you down? And then the last area of child development would be that I included here is social emotional. So that interaction piece, how are you feeling? How do your actions affect other people and vice versa? So that's another piece that we can definitely include in some of our activities and non-screen ideas. So the goal here in all these activities is just to have fun. We really want to share the moment. We're busy going from one thing to the next, and you have this done and we need to do this chore, and sometimes that can get just tiring, and it just might be fun to take some time out, just even if it's 10-15 minutes, one book, one activity. You don't even need to set a time limit. If it's just something that is out of your daily routine and can kind of make you just be in the moment and enjoy those around you, that's fantastic. So the goal here is just to really have fun. When everyone's enjoying the moment, I think communication feels easier, everyone feels more successful. Um, I'm going to give you a big list here of some activities and ideas, and I will take a few out in order to go back to that child development areas list and give you a couple examples of what that would look like in that activity. So books can be one really fun activity. You get to cuddle up, you get to be close, you get to maybe share the moment here in front of you. Can be really fun. So books are a great way to connect, and that will be one of the examples that I'll use of how you can include a lot of different developmental areas there. Board games, of course, are really fun. We have some family favorites. Maybe even ordering or borrowing from someone some other games just to get some fresh ideas. Like I said, there's so many ideas out there, but board games, card games can be really fun. And even just doing some magic tricks, you can even just Google up some simple magic tricks. Those are some really fun activities that can bring a lot of fun family time together. You've also got your puzzles, you've got your Play-Doh, you've got blocks, you've got Legos, you've got lots of tactile things that you can be playing with. Sometimes I think for parents, some parents, I guess, like more structure. They like a board game that's there's a beginning and an end and then it's over. Whereas some of those free play activities like Legos, when is it over? Or I guess a puzzle is pretty apparent, but maybe even just playing with blocks or Play-Doh, like when are you actually done and what are kind of the rules? So some of these activities might be a little harder for you to engage. You might need to think a little bit more, or kind of force yourself to sit and maybe listen to their input versus your input. So that's just kind of some differences. If you find yourself an activity is a little easier for you than another play activity, that, kind of think of why that might be, and what you're feeling during those activities and how you can maybe change your approach. So we have building toys, lots of pretend play, like playing with dolls or characters. Again, very open-ended. If it's not your thing, maybe another family member is going to do that. But just kind of keeping that in mind. Mad Libs are really fun. So Mad Libs are, if you can do a Google search for those, where there's a line, it starts of a story, and then you fill in a noun, and then you fill in an adjective. So it's really good for talking about parts of language, lots of vocabulary, descriptive words. You can also be very silly with it. And then when you're done filling in the lines, you read the story, and our family has had lots of fun with that. You can play trivia games. One of my favorite things to do in speech therapy, but also when my kids were littler, about this age, I loved putting things in bags and maybe just a pillowcase and collect different things around the house. So it's really fun to play grab bag, and they love to be the teacher too, or take the turn to be the one in charge. And you just put in a bunch of different things. And I have something in here that starts with this sound, and I might describe it a little. So that's always a really fun thing. Arts and crafts are really fun. My example with arts and crafts, as far as with my family and kind of taking the approach of my child, was we were painting flower pots in the spring. And I'm, very specific with drawing lines of different colors. My daughter was mixing paints and mixing colors, and she just was going to town. And her pot ended up just being so beautiful, and it was just so completely random that I thought, look how specific I am, and intentional with my paints and my colors. And I just always think about that, of how she just didn't follow any rules, or she didn't, color in the lines, and hers ended up just being so beautiful. So that's always my example of kind of letting go and just seeing what naturally unfolds. Music is a great way to engage with families, and we always have dance parties. Obviously, it's gross motor. You can do sequences. It's turn taking, taking turns picking each family member's favorite song. We can always do exercise and active games and tossing games, and just like I said, there's so many different ideas out there. Another one, my final example, is to do would you rathers. Would you rather swim in a pool of M&Ms or swim in a pool of marshmallows? So that always brings up some really good family discussions. And these can, like I said, these don't have to be a specific time you're setting aside. It could just be something that naturally happens. It could be something you do set aside because you're enjoying this or enjoying to connect as a family. So I just gave you a few examples, and I know I'm going quickly through these. You can always message me at Columbus Beach and Hearing Center if you want more ideas or want to talk about, well, I really want to work on this, but this is their favorite activity. How do I mesh these together? Also, we have, for Columbus Beach and Hearing Center, our Facebook page, we have Instagram, and we have Pinterest pages. So you can always just go to any of those, and it'll give you lots of ideas, and we'll always give you an explanation, or tell you kind of why this would be something we would work on, and how you can include some of these learning areas. So I just wanted to as we wrap up, just give you a few ideas of how to incorporate some of these developmental areas for your child's language development in some of these activities that I've given you. And if you refer to my handout, I give you a little bit more detail. But for example, if I was going to share a book, I would share, let me grab one here real quick while I have up close, is an I Spy book, but here we go. So with my I Spy book, I'm going to track the title. It's I Spy. With your kindergartner, they may love to find the letter of their name hidden in all these letters. They may like to try to sound out some of the letters. If you could say, can you find the word book in this title? And so they could find a specific word, like I said, a specific letter. So we're working on a lot of literacy skills here. So we're tracking as we read, we're pointing out the title, we're maybe pointing out the author and the illustrator, talking about how this book might be different than some of the other books that we've read. Some of them might be more story-based. They might be beginning, middle, and end based. So there's lots of different things to talk about based on your book, and asking those questions of, instead of do you like the book, like I said before, you get a yes or a no. How is this book different than that Curious George story we read? And so that would lead to a nice conversation of trying to make connections of things you've done in the past versus things you're doing now. I always like to point out, for the little ones especially, they're going to know that this is the picture, these are the words. And so we're going to track as we read. I spy a beard, two knots that are tied. And then this one actually ends in a rhyming word, slide. So for your kindergartners, this is really good. Tide, slide, and talking about that's a rhyming word. Can you think of another word that would rhyme with tide, slide? And what about the one hide? So kind of talking about how the ending would stay the same. Those are really great. You can talk about capital letters at the beginning of the sentence, lowercase. You could talk about punctuation. These are all things that they're going to be talking about in school. So as you're doing this, maybe a language concept that I would bring in, since language is one of our developmental areas. If you find, oh, look, I found the giraffe. Tell me two things you know about a giraffe. Well, I know it has a long neck and it has spots. And where could you find it? Oh, you could find it at the zoo or in the jungle. So thinking about all those language concepts you're describing, you're putting it into a category. Is it a food or an animal? You're answering questions. Where would you find it? What else do you know? Have you ever seen one? Remember last summer we went and fed the giraffe? His tongue was so long, and just kind of going on and on, making these connections. So I know sometimes, again, as adults, we like to read the book, we like to finish the book. There's a beginning, middle, end, but there are so many different things you can do in between. I like to, when it's more of a story-based book, why do you think they did that? Or what would you do if you were in that situation? Or what do you think is going to happen next? Those are really good questions to ask during a story, just to kind of get that learning and get them connecting personally to the story and what's going on and what they might do. You can do lots with books, even when you're done. You can do lots of extending activities. So, say it was a book about snowmen or snowballs, you could take your socks and ball them up and find a laundry basket and do a snowball toss or a snowball fight back and forth. So, that would bring in your gross motor. I always say for the area of speech, you can, as far as speech sounds, you can emphasize the sounds that you are making. Usually around this age, early elementary, most of the speech sounds that your child is producing should be correct. There's a few later developing around that time, which is the a R sound, a TH, and th. And sometimes S and Z can be a th, F, and the can be that forward tongue carry. So I sometimes would point that out and see when I make that sound, I do this, and maybe looking in the mirror and sharing with that to point out some of those sounds. Even another literacy thing would be, if you did find the giraffe, what's that first sound that you hear in the word giraffe? J, j. What's that last sound? Giraffe. I hear that. So kind of getting them to tune into some of those. Um, I think that about wraps up the presentation. Like I said, if you have questions or need some more information, I would love for you to email us at Columbus Speech and Hearing. Please check out all of our different pages. And I hope you enjoyed the presentation.